All right. Well, thank you so much for joining this late in the day. I know we had an early start. I decided to pull up a chair and make it more conversational rather than like stand and like look down. So, well, first of all, hello everyone. My name is Soyoung Park. I am part of Sam's Club. I lead measurement insights and data strategy for Sam's Club member access platform, also known as MAP. It's our advertising business for Sam's Club. The topic that I'm going to share today is dear to my heart. It's measurement. And I know we have a couple of our MAP associates. Thank you for being here for moral support. But if you're not MAP associate, true kudos and gold star for you because you do have true passion for data and measurement. There you go. Now, let's start off with what I think is a common pitfall in today's marketing. I think we have been focusing too much on a single campaign level metrics. While it is important that we should measure the success of individual campaign, I think it's also important that we zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Right? Longitudinal measurement really helps us to understand the long-term impact of marketing efforts we're making and also helps us make strategic adjustments over time. So what do I mean by longitudinal measurement? Really simply put, it involves tracking and analyzing performance data over an extended period of time. So let's get into what are some ways that we can think about. What are some ways that we can measure longitudinal measurement, right? So customer lifetime value. Who's familiar with customer lifetime value? At least you've heard, right? CLTV at some point. Typically, we think about CLTV at the brand level. And CLTV is a pretty key metric that brands use to assess total value of a customer that a customer is expected to bring to the brand over the course of their lifetime, right? And so typically, the calculation or the function of CLTV are three components. One is the revenue expected to be generated by a customer, and the cost associated with acquiring or servicing that customer. And third component is the tenure, which is the length of the relationship with that customer. So, customer lifetime value can be measured in a couple different ways. And first approach, I have little visual graphics here. The first approach, let's say for the purpose of illustration, let's say a typical tenure of a lifetime for a brand for a customer is 12 months. So I'm going to use 12 months as a lifetime duration. The first approach is actually running a descriptive analytics by identifying a cohort of new to brand buyers 12 months ago. So we're going to turn back the clock and go back to the new buyers, new to brand buyers 12 months ago. And then using the empirical observational data to collect all of the brand contributions that this new to brand buyer has made over time to sum up what is the total value. Pretty straightforward, right? At the customer level. That's the descriptive analytics approach. Now, the second approach is using predictive or ML algorithm to develop a predictive 12 months value, again, at the individual member level, right? So you can see that there's a historical approach and there is a future value forward-looking approach. Now, let's remember that the CLTV has multiple CLTV has components that, give me one second. We have to remember that all customers are not made equal, right? And so when we run CLTV, we get that customer level value that we enable brands to be able to create value-based customer segments that they can then leverage to maximize their return on their investment by tailoring their media strategy, whether it is promotional offer or whether it is messaging or creatives or even product offering. Now, recently we completed a large-scale LTV meta study that involved over 100 campaign performance metrics with food and beverage brands at Sam's. And what we learned is pretty remarkable. So let me share what we learned from this meta study. And from the meta study, what we measured is really the impact of map media in longitudinal incremental sales of their brands at Sam's. So here is the findings. The IROAS, or incremental return on ad spend for a single campaign view, when compared with the longitudinal IROAS with the CLTV, the lift in IROAS was 60 to 65%. Let me just pause and let it sink in. The delta, meaning the single campaign IROAS versus longitudinal IROAS with CLTV, was 60 to 65%. So let's unpack this a little bit more. Like, what does it really mean, and how did I get to this 60 to 65%? So let's start out by really unpacking how to get to the IROAS for a single campaign incremental ROAS, right? Again, single campaign IROAS. We'll build the formula together. We start out with the campaign new brand buyers, meaning campaign exposed, and from the campaign exposed, we have new buyers, right, joining the brand. But we also know that among them are going to be some of the organic new buyers that are not necessarily media influenced. So leveraging our test control group, we now then solve for what is the incremental new to brand buyers, right? So that's kind of where the incrementality comes in, using that test control group. Once we know what is the incremental new buyers, then we multiply average brand spend during that campaign period. Pretty straightforward, and that's how we get to incremental revenue, right, from the campaign, from the acquired new to brand buyers. When we divide that by ad spend, that gives us the incremental ROAS. Hopefully there's no mystery. This is a pretty straightforward formula that industry uses, right, for IROAS. Now let's take a look at the second version, which is longitudinal IROAS with CLTV. We start in the same place with that new buyer cohort, right, that we purchased 12 months ago, and we find out what is that incremental new brand buyers from test control group. And this is where the CLTV components start showing up. You will see that we first find what is the repeat brand buyer rate, meaning among the incremental buyers, we also know that these buyers are not 100% of them are going to stick around to keep purchasing with the brand. We know that there are some churns, right? So by understanding what is the repeat buyer rate, we know that subset of the incremental buyers are going to stay with the brand. Then we need to find out what is the brand trips, what is the average brand trips over 12 months or over the lifetime, right? So how many times? Is it 2 times, 3 times, or 5 times over the course of that lifetime that these repeat buyers are coming back to the brand? And then we multiply that by average brand spend per trip. So every time the customer is making a trip to buy something with the brand, what is that average spend? When we multiply this across, what we are left with is the incremental revenue post-campaign, right? So this is the LTV portion of it. And then now let's combine it with incremental revenue from that initial acquisition campaign. When we combine these two, we're left with incremental revenue of CLTV, in this case, over the course of 12 months. And when we divide by ad spend, again, you know the answer gives us the IROAS, right? So this is how we got the single campaign view of IROAS and the longitudinal IROAS with CLTV. And to bring it home, right, here is the page that shows, again, the 60 to 65%. And hopefully this makes more sense now, how I got to this lift, right? But before I move off of this page, I'd like to call out 2 really important points. One is that to calculate a reliable and accurate CLTV longitudinal IROAS, what is really important is that high fidelity completeness of member behavioral data, transactional data over time, right? If you recall in the prior slide, all the components of CLTV require that repeated, right, as customers come back, what is their typical average spend? How many times do they come back? What is the repeat buyer rate, right? Those are all grounded on that individual customer level transaction that is complete set of data, not a partial data. And this is where actually MAP right? We're very lucky to have the advantage of Sam's Club membership model where we have that 100% deterministic customer view, right? So we leverage that information to be able to calculate the CLTV. However, many retailers struggle in this area because they do not have the complete picture of the customers oftentimes because transactions are made in cash or, they are ordering by shipping it to a different address and they're not able to match it and so on and so forth. Second point, important point, is that this 60 to 65% that you're seeing in the lift is not generalizable across other categories. As I mentioned, that this meta study was done specifically for food and beverage category with its very distinct purchase cycle, repeat rates, or average spend. And therefore, we would not be able to apply that IROAS lift for other categories, which would end up being same to 60, 65%. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. Okay, so we kind of dove deep into the IROAS compared to single versus longitudinal view. I think I have most of you still, so this is good news because we just covered the most dense portion of the presentation, but it's going to get lighter. Okay, so, but let's not stop the sharing here. I have one more hot off the press learnings from a recent study that we just wrapped up with a leading CPG brand. So the test we did was a really interesting one where we were measuring the effectiveness of combo ML model to hyper-target high-value new buyer prospects, not new buyer yet, but high-value potential prospects to become a new buyer, leveraging our brand propensity model and predictive CLTV. And so what we learned there is that the model to identify the high propensity to purchase with the brand for the first time outperformed the non-targeted group, right? If we didn't use that model by 2.3x. So prove that, yes, there's opportunity and we can improve the performance of the campaign with this model. Now, second learning was that when we apply the predictive CLTV on these new buyers and measure their value over a lifetime, it improved their average value by 60%. So that was another great findings. So now I've shared kind of two sets of learnings from distinct recent studies that we completed. And I think we're ready to move on to then another perspective on how to think about longitudinal measurement, which is multi-touch attribution, right? Now, multi-touch attribution or MTA is not a new concept in marketing, right? It's been around. But our team at MAP, what we're doing is evolving the way we're using MTA for retail media, right? Today, I think our campaigns are often measured, as I mentioned earlier, really just as a single campaign level and not with enough emphasis for the big picture. Now, the MTA that we've built, or we call it the MAP's Advanced Incrementality MTA, is a bit of a hybrid of features borrowing from MMM, so media mix modeling, as well as classic MTA, multi-touch attribution. And this enables us to be able to actually get the incremental sales from the media with consistent methodology across all ad products. So that would be display, that would be sponsored product ads or email, and also across all channels. So that is on-site, off-site, and in club or in store for most retailers, right? And so when we have the insights from MTA, it really helps us to be able to effectively or more meaningfully compare across the channels and across tactics, which often is part of the pain points that we hear from our advertisers, that we do not have consistent way to compare across tactics and channels. Now, both MTA and MMM, and I'm sure you guys have heard of these two terms and how they're different. You've heard that some, retail media uses MMM or some uses MTA, and why one chooses the other. They are both essentially attribution modeling methodologies, right? With the end goal being to seek what is the incremental impact or incremental ROAS from their campaign. Now, One advantage, though, MTA, multi-touch attribution, brings that it gives more granular insights at the customer level. And the reason that is because MTA is a bottoms-up model, meaning that it's built with customer level data, whereas MMM is a top-down model. And so because we're building it with the bottoms-up level, it does give us the opportunity to lean into more granular insights. But the key catch here is that in order to build MTA, you need that high-fidelity, complete customer-level data that reflects the full customer journey touch points along the way. And again, this is where we're lucky to have Sam's Club membership model because we have that complete view. So we are leveraging that full customer journey touch points to be able to build the MTA model and provide that more granular insights. So you might be wondering, okay, so what are some insights that you're giving? A typical question that we are able to answer through our MTA model includes, hey, what is the impact or what is an incremental sales driven by specific tactics A versus B, right? What is the impact to my brand sales if I change my budget, either spend more or spend down? What is that impact, right? Or what is the impact to my brand sales if I change my media mix model? And how should I change that media mix model, right? So these are all kind of questions that we're able to answer. But what gets us to that extra granularity from the customer level information is to be able to answer questions like, what are the most effective or what are the highest incrementality driving tactics for, say, Gen Z, right? Or what is the most effective channel to target and retain, say, omni-channel buyers as opposed to in-club only buyers, right? That level of granularity is possible because we are building MTA insights from bottoms up through customer level data. So by leveraging our MTA model, we are helping our advertisers to gain more holistic view of our customers and their journey, as well as help them make more informed decision based on that big picture. So in closing, I'd like to leave with this. As marketers, we need to ensure that we're selecting the right set of KPIs because not all KPIs are created equal, right? And it's important that we line our metrics with our goals, right? By doing so, we're able to accurately measure our performance and also adjust and optimize our strategy accordingly, whether it is for short-term gains or long-term impact. That's it. Thank you for your attention.